A couple of weeks ago, I predicted that the Department of Justice was going to put the brakes on the settlement between National Association of Realtors and the Sitzer-Burnett case out in Missouri. And it appears that that is not going to happen. Brian here with Lamacchia Realty. I've got an article pulled up that talks a little bit more about that. I am as surprised as probably many of you are. So let's jump right into it. So the judge grants preliminary approval of NAR commission lawsuit settlement. A final approval hearing of NAR's commission lawsuit settlement has been set for November 2024. The National Association of Realtors can breathe a small sigh of relief. Not really. The trade group's nationwide settlement of the commission lawsuits has passed its first hurdle as Judge Stephen Bowe, who oversaw the Sitzer-Burnett lawsuit, granted preliminary approval of the NAR settlement on Tuesday. While the agreement still must receive final approval from the court, the industry is now one step closer to operating under the new rules outlined in the settlement agreement. According to NAR, the new rules will go into place in July of this year. So I thought the rules would be not going into place until perhaps when the settlement is finalized in November, but it appears that we are still on track for July of this year, and maybe even sooner. In fact, I'm seeing it already, and we'll get to that in a little bit. In his ruling, Bowe called the proposed changes fair, reasonable, and adequate. That is a bunch of BS. There is nothing fair, nor reasonable, nor adequate in this settlement. I mean, if we're going to blow it up, let's blow it up. And this settlement does not blow it up. All it does is just make things less transparent and hurt both buyers and sellers. Under the terms of the settlement agreement, NAR will pay $418 million to a settlement fund over the course of 4 years, and the trade group is barred from establishing any sort of rules that would allow a seller's agent to set compensation for a buyer's agent. Right, you can't set the compensation, but you can certainly still offer it. And what's interesting here is that now, as people are digging into this cooperating compensation, it really is on a state-by-state basis. In the overwhelming majority of the states, something like 46 out of the 50 states allow it. So this was 100% a fraudulent lawsuit in the first place. But National Association of Realtors did not do a very good job defending it. They didn't do that due diligence during the trial. They didn't present that to the jury, and now they are stuck paying $418 million. When I say they, I mean me, because I am part of the National Association of Realtors, and it is my money that is going towards these fraudulent lawsuits. If you sounds like I'm upset, it's because I am. This is absurd. Additionally, all fields displaying broker compensation on MLSs must be eliminated, and there is a blanket ban on the requirement that agents subscribe to MLSs in the first place in order to offer or accept compensation for their work. Again, this is not a blanket ban on cooperating compensation. All it means is that you cannot display it in MLS, or at least not in the buyer broker compensation field. Now, I'm already seeing it in my market where people are leaving that blank, they're putting a 0 in there, and then they're writing it in the comments, or they're saying, contact me for more details. Like, it's going off grid. It's going to be done behind closed doors. So you're no longer going to have the ability as a buyer. Right now, as a buyer, you can go onto Zillow, you can go onto Redfin, and you can see what type of compensation is offered to the buyer agent for that property. Moving forward, you won't have that ability, right? So now you've got to ask, or you go into it blindly and make that part of your offer. So you could be competing on properties that, let's say there's 15, 20 offers. And if you're putting in an offer that includes 2%, 3%, $10,000, $5,000, $1,000, whatever that number is, and asking for some type of seller concession, that's just going to have to be worked into the deal. And you're going to be at a distinct disadvantage as opposed to someone who can afford it on their own, which is going to hurt first-time home buyers or people who have less money to put down in the first place. The settlement agreement also mandates that MLS participants working with buyers must enter into a written buyer-broker agreement. This is a huge win for real estate agents. I can't tell you how many times I've worked with a buyer, and even though I'm the procuring cause, for whatever reason, things just didn't work out. Doesn't happen often, but it does happen, and that is a problem, right? Because I don't get paid as a real estate agent unless that deal closes. So I could work with 6 buyers and only 3 of them buy. Well, that time and energy and gas money and meals on the road and time away from family, all that comes at a significant cost that isn't factored in because I'm not getting paid for any of that. So that is what's lost in this whole thing, is that people think like, oh, you work with a buyer, the buyer buys, and then you get paid. No, it's a numbers game. You have to work with 6 buyers to get 3 under agreement, of which 2 will close. Like, that's just the math, and I'm okay with that. But now moving forward, this is awesome for agents, because now before even showing a property, I've got to sit down, or I have the opportunity, I'm not being forced to do this. I now have the opportunity to sit down with a potential buyer and explain the value that I bring to the table and the services that I provide. And I can also go over my compensation. And again, I'm going to be very clear as to exactly what that compensation is. And then we can have a conversation about how that gets paid. Does it get made, is it part of the seller, are we going to be asking for a seller concession? Are they able to pay me out of pocket? Or is it a combination of the two? Those are the types of conversations that I think are fantastic for agents to have up front, and for buyers as well, so they know what they're getting into, and then there's no mystery. And then that way, when a property comes on the market, even though there's nothing listed specifically about buyer broker compensation, you know exactly what you're getting when you go into it. Lead to a better relationship between the real estate agent and the buyer. And the fact that we have to get these agreements up front before even showing a property is fantastic. It is huge. That is awesome. And part of that is there are some buyers that you start working with, and then you immediately realize, like, as an agent, that this probably isn't going to work out. They've either got unrealistic expectations, or they aren't as qualified as they need to be in that particular market, or they're looking at properties that are just outside their budget and they're not willing to make any compromises. Like, there's a whole host of things that go into that. But having these conversations on the front end is huge, because you as an agent now are not going to be spending all that time investing all that money into a client that isn't necessarily going to close. This is a final approval hearing for the settlement has been set for November 2024. The court will hold a final approval now. And it goes on a little bit more from there. Now, this article does not talk about the Department of Justice at all. So that is surprising to me, because the Department of Justice now has the ability to weigh in. But from what I can gather is that this Sitzer-Burnett case, this is like a done deal. This settlement, like, it's moving forward. The Department of Justice can maybe put in some type of statement of interest, but it's not going to have any material impact on the settlement itself. So it looks like we're moving forward. Bye-bye broker agent compensation. Originally I thought this was going to kill buyer agency, but we are truly not decoupling the commissions. All we're doing is literally like hiding it under here. So this is terrible for consumers across the board, both buyers and sellers. And it's stunning to me that, National Association of Realtors is still going to be, the rules, the settlement that has been agreed upon will have no material impact on the way in which business is done in our industry. So let me know down in the comments, what do you think about this? Is this something that is a freight train coming, or is this something that it's really just the same way of doing business, but it's just going to look a little differently? Let me know down in the comments. That's all I have for today. If you did enjoy content like this, make sure that you smash the like button, maybe subscribe to the channel, and we will catch you in the next one. Take care.